Hello, friends. It's Chapo. Hello, everybody. It's Monday, November 28th. Chapo coming at you. Hope everyone had a good Thanksgiving holiday. Let's get it rolling today. Felix, I've been watching a lot of Law and Order SVU episodes recently because once again you've infected my mind with this, and luckily it is on TV 24 hours a day, 365 days a year.
Yeah. What period of SVU are you watching?
The block that I got into yesterday was more of like season 6, season 8. You know, like back when before Peter Scavino and any of the new. It's still Munch, Tutuola, Stabler, Benson, like the classic golden age SVU.
Yeah, like I mean, okay, so I put it into like two major eras. It's before Christopher Maloney left and after. After Christopher Maloney left, they tried to replace his presence on the show with a succession of pissed off detectives. They famously had Detective Amaro, who's played by like I would say a generic version of Bobby Cannavale, like one of those.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
Hey,
Like
we walking in. You're at the friggin' rest.
Like a guy, like they'll have a character who's like, you know, he's a detective, but his conflict is that he's too Latino. You know. He gets too Latino in his marriage and at his work, and they're like, stop it, you're getting too Latino. And then they bring in it's not the same as Christopher Maloney.
And then they bring in, Rollins, the hot blonde detective who has like a gambling addiction and a bad father.
Okay, so Rollins is ridiculous. Rollins is what they do for that character. They have this hot younger blonde detective who's like a shit kicker from Georgia. And instead of like giving her as much of a backstory as Olivia, what they do is like every week she like almost gets like to death by bookies because she has a gambling addiction, or she like does something that should get her fired as a cop, but like doesn't.
I mean, didn't they introduce her character by she's basically she ends up having sex with a guy who's a criminal played by Donal Long, who's actually an undercover detective.
Yeah,
so to keep his cover, he has sex with a police officer, and then that pseudo sexual assault becomes the genesis of their relationship on the show. Like they fall in love with each other.
But that's in between her having an on again off again thing with Detective Latino, who also like. They do the same thing with her and Amaro, which is like they fire them and then bring them back every other week because they keep doing insane things like going undercover without telling anybody.
But yeah, I was just watching the more the golden age SVU, and I gotta say my favorite episodes are the ones that deal with like privileged New York City private school kids and like sex panics. There was literally one about rainbow parties and like sex bracelets, and there's one just any episode where it's like online or chat rooms lead to an outbreak of HIV among thousands of high school students in New York, including the risk that Stabler's daughter may have been exposed.
Those are really good. I like it when this is like later in the Stabler period where they're like, okay, we got a plot twist. Stabler's daughter, she has the bad woman disease. She has woman madness.
No,
the crying
Stabler
woman
is
disorder.
such a bad father. His daughter becomes a whore, and his son is like, "Fuck you, Dad! I'm joining the army.
Yeah,
can't be under your roof." And he's like, "I'll always love you, son. I'm not signing your induction papers."
Yeah, the difference between the two eras of Law and Order, in my opinion, are like, okay, in the golden era. Every episode starts out the same. It's like a little like New York vignette, right? It's like two like just tri-state boobs moving a refrigerator, and they're like, "Oh, I'm thinking about going to the strip club this weekend," and the other one goes, "You You're full of it. I bet you think those girls really like you. And then they like one of them trips and he's like, hey, watch where you going. This lady's gonna have our ass. And he trips over like the most desecrated corpse ever. And then the SVU detectives are there. But after Stabler leaves and after they get a bigger budget, they change it. They make it like less New Yorky. And what happens is they'll show you like little vignettes. It'll be like a girl growing up and falling in love and like getting a teen career.
Yes.
And then it will immediately cut to her like just like a desecrated corpse and Olivia Benson going, this is the most ejaculated on body I've seen this year.
And I was like, oh, is this a rip from the headlines episode about my wife sucked off neighbors while I clapped for carers? No, it was just this like, montage of this woman's life and like how hard it was to be, in New York City during COVID. And then she's like going to lose her restaurant. And then it's just like, oh, she like takes the building inspector hostage. And I'm like, this isn't a special victim.
It sucks,
where are the
dude.
victims?
Because they like all the guys who used to write for that show was perfect because it was written by like 89-year-olds who wrote every episode of like Homicide or New York Undercover. So they could write like a perfectly self-contained, like hour-long cop story and like just write really fun tri-state goblin characters. But then after those guys like presumably died of old age, they bring in people who, got master's degrees in TV and they're like, oh, we should actually I was thinking we should actually make it sort of like La Dolce Vita in the 3-minute intro before we show the woman's ejaculated on beheaded corpse.
No, classic one. We were like the classic one, like the teen sex panic one, began with, classic New York City thing. A troop of Boy Scouts on the top of a building, looking at constellations through telescopes, and then like then two of them are like doing, they move the telescope down, and they're like, check this out, like there's a babe in one of these windows,
yeah.
And then the scout leader is like, what are you doing? You got to look at the sky, and then they're like, oh, I don't think she's moving, and it's just a body on a rooftop.
Yeah, those are great.
And and then in that episode, it was like high school girls who are like, okay, first it starts off about like, oh, they're hooking up. And kids don't date anymore because they're just having blowjob parties. And then from one commercial break later, it's like she was a underage.
Yeah. Those are really, that's like I have like favorite tropes of the series, and the tropes go on even after the series had a decline after Stabler left. But okay, like when they investigate school kids and it turns out, like a 14-year-old has 7 kids and is an actress and like is a hooker on the weekends. I love that. I love when there's a totally normal guy and they get his DNA on like 9 murders. And then the twist, and it's not a twist anymore because they've done this approximately 37 times. It turns out the guy had a secret son or twin brother who got the rapist. He's normal, but he has someone who's genetically identical to him who got the killer gene. They love doing that one.
Okay, there's another one we watched where it was like, okay, it begins and they're doing one of those like, sort of puppet presentations for like young children about like inappropriate touching. And, like the puppets say like, hey, what do you do if someone touches you in an unsafe space? And they're like, and then after the little like school assembly, they like have an opportunity for the kids to like, like ask them questions or talk to them one-on-one. And then like one of the little kids is like, I touched weenies with someone. And they're like,
yeah,
okay, we gotta get Stabler in here. And then they bring the mom in and they're like, okay, like, I'm sorry, ma'am, but like your child has made an allegation that he's been sexually abused. And the mother goes, not again. And it's just like her other kid was abused by her father. And then the son that was abused is now abusing his younger brother.